Hey, Dethroners, welcome back to the Dethroning Your Inner Critic YouTube channel. I'm Joanna Kleinman, and today I want to dive into a life-changing idea that completely transformed how I view myself and my emotions. So, for so much of my life, I chased only emotions that made me feel good. I wanted to be valued, I wanted to be liked. Maybe that's true for you too, right? I mean, who doesn't want that? But what I didn't realize for a very long time is that underneath all of that, I thought I had to earn my worth. So I was chasing external success. I was trying to be good enough. I was trying to achieve enough just to feel like I deserved love and respect and happiness. But here's the truth that changed everything. So I now deeply understand that I don't have to earn it. And none of us do, because worth is our birthright. It's not something we achieve. It's something that we already are. But there are so many of us that live like we're trying to earn it. So we believe that if we just get to the level of our career, or we write the book, or we make enough money, or we have enough clients, or we have the dream house or the relationship, or lose the weight, or achieve some other kind of milestone, that then we'll finally feel enough. And that's the trap. And I know that trap very well because I've lived it over and over again. That's why I'm so masterful in getting people out of their own trap. So the quality of your life is the quality of your emotions, not your achievements, not your possessions, how you feel on a day-to-day basis. So think about this for a moment. Everything that you're chasing, whether it's a goal you're trying to accomplish, or that relationship, or that buying that house, it's not about that thing in and of itself. It's about how you think that thing is going to make you feel. We want success because we think it's going to bring us joy. We want the relationship because we think that it'll bring us the feeling of love. There's nothing wrong with wanting those things, but here is the kicker. You don't have to wait for those external things to feel the way that you want to feel. You can choose how you want to feel right now. So here's the thing that's fascinating. Most of us go through life thinking that our emotions and our reactions to the world around us is from our external circumstances, that we can only feel real joy, real happiness, real fulfillment when the external circumstances of our life line up the way that we want them to. But that belief keeps us in a state of powerlessness. So we become emotional victims to our circumstances. When things go well, we feel really good. And when they don't, that's when we spiral into anxiety and frustration and despair. So it's this pendulum of the attachment to the good emotions, and the pendulum swings between the highs of validation and the lows of disappointment. So when we become attached, sometimes even addicted to things going well, right? Whether that's in our careers or relationships or personal achievements, we place our sense of self-worth on those external outcomes. We assign too much meaning and significance to our accomplishments, and we believe that that's what defines us. But then we set ourselves up, because what happens when things don't go as planned, or when the validation and recognition that we want from others isn't there? Okay, so this is the attachment that keeps us stuck in this vicious cycle. All right, when we're riding high on praise, we feel powerful and fulfilled and worthy. And as soon as the external validation fades, we plummet into that feeling of inadequacy and anxiety and frustration, right? So that's how we literally train our emotional state to become dependent on circumstances outside of our control. So the high of the accomplishment inevitably fuels the low of not receiving the recognition that we crave. And we're sort of in this constant state of emotional instability. Okay. Now, I want to talk about where true freedom comes in, because real freedom is not about getting that validation from others. It's actually about detaching, what I call unhooking from the need for those things to define our worth. So when we stop assigning so much significance to our achievements, we free ourselves from that emotional roller coaster, and we begin to understand that our value has nothing to do with any of that, but it's from something way deeper within us. Okay. So we're breaking the belief that our happiness depends on our external circumstances. And that's when we reclaim our power. We step out of the role of being the emotional victim, right? When that's where our mood is dictated by whether things are going well or falling apart. And we can literally train ourselves to step into a place of inner stability. And in that space, that's really the only place where we can find peace, regardless of the ups and downs of life, right? So it's detachment. And in this detachment, this is where we release control. And this is actually where we discover a space of stillness, right? Where we're no longer swayed by that pendulum of external success or failure. So you have the ability right now to retrain your mind, to rewire your brain, to reset your nervous system, and to consciously and deliberately choose how you're going to feel in any given moment. So this is about mastering your emotions by training your brain and your nervous system to respond differently to the world around you. Okay. So, well, how do we do that? First, we've got to retrain our mind. So there is a lot of power to bringing awareness to your thought patterns. Your thought patterns have been around you for a very, very long time. So it's the thoughts that we think that create our emotional experience. So each time you have a thought, that thought triggers a chemical reaction in your brain. And that chemical reaction in your brain produces an emotion. And most of us have a brain that's conditioned to repeat thoughts of fear and inadequacy and lack. So your brain literally gets conditioned to produce emotions like anxiety and frustration and anger. And over time, these emotional thought patterns that are triggered, right? They're triggered by your thoughts. They become so habitual that they're almost automatic. So the first step in retraining your mind is you've first got to become aware of the thoughts that are running the show. You've got to ask yourself the question, what's the story I keep telling myself and mistaking it for the truth or for the facts? Most of us are not even aware of the unconscious thoughts that are shaping our emotional experience. Okay. So journaling your thoughts, even just pausing throughout the day to notice your thoughts, you can begin to see the connection between your thinking and your emotional state. So once you become aware of the habitual thought patterns, now you have the power to consciously start to plug into very different thoughts. Now, this is not about ignoring reality. It's certainly not about becoming overly positive, but it is about consciously choosing a more empowering narrative over and over again. So when you catch yourself in that habitual, I'm not enough, or this isn't going to work for me, that's just your mind running its habitual thought pattern. And the only evidence you have for these beliefs is that you keep telling yourself that story. And then you attach that story onto some part of your life. And it's very easy to find a part of your life that doesn't match your ideal picture. And so that's where it goes. Okay. Now, as human beings, part of our human nature is that we crave control. And this is where that innate part of our automatic, almost instinctual selves can backfire, right? We want to know how things are going to unfold. And we believe that if we just try hard enough and plan enough and push enough, we can force life to give us exactly what we want and get it to go in the direction that we want it to go. But life doesn't work that way. And there's an underlying truth that much of life is unpredictable. So when we really start to understand the parts of life that we're trying to control, but that we really don't have control over, that's when we can start leaning into letting go. Now, when I talk about letting go in my Mastering Your Mind groups, that's a hard concept for people to grasp. Now, why is it so difficult to practice surrendering and letting go? Because we're conditioned to equate surrendering with weakness or failure, right? We've been taught that control equals safety. So if we're not actively steering the ship, somehow we're going to end up in chaos. And the fear of the unknown makes us cling to outcomes and timelines and strategies, and believing that if we release control, we'll somehow lose everything we've worked for, or somehow we'll be left behind. Okay. But the opposite is true. So surrendering requires trust. It requires trust in ourselves, trust in the unfolding of life, and sometimes, actually more often than not, trust in something that's greater than ourselves. But trusting can feel terrifying when we've been conditioned to rely only on what we can see and measure and control, right? It's much easier to rely on the mind's tendency to analyze and plan and problem solve instead of trying to embrace uncertainty and allow life to reveal itself step by step by step, right? We resist surrender because we don't want to feel vulnerable. And vulnerability is something that we run away from. So letting go means we might not get what we think we need or what we think we deserve. And our egos fear this loss. But there's a paradox in this, all right? In trying to hold on so hard to force outcomes, we block the natural flow of life. We become rigid and stressed and disconnected from our own intuition and our deeper wisdom. And that's how we allow those stressful emotions to impact the quality of our lives, right? If we're blocking our intuition and our deeper wisdom and blocking the natural flow of life, we're going to be in constant stress and overwhelm. And that creates the quality of our life. So true surrender is about realizing that we don't have to figure it all out. We can move forward by trusting that the next step will appear when we need it. No sooner, no later. And each step might not be clear at first, right? And so that uncertainty can be really uncomfortable. And trust me, I'm very, very familiar with the uncertainty and not knowing necessarily what the next few steps are going to be. But I can assure you that this is where true growth happens. When we trust, we allow space for creativity, for new possibilities, and for unforeseen paths to emerge. And this has happened to me over and over again. This has happened to the hundreds of people that have gone through the Mastering Your Mind program. I've seen it over and over again. So surrendering doesn't mean we stop trying. It doesn't mean we give up on our goals and what we want. It means we release that tight grip of control and we let life unfold, knowing that whatever happens is a part of the bigger picture that we may not yet see. So letting go of our rigid expectations allows us to be more present, to be more adaptable, and ultimately to be more at peace with whatever comes our way. Now, this is a very different life, my friends. When you are more at peace with whatever comes your way, because you're trusting that you don't need to ward off danger. You can handle it if it comes, and you can just be present. Now, this process is difficult because it asks you to do the very thing that goes against our conditioning, which is to trust in the unknown, to let go of control, to believe that life will support us even when the path ahead isn't fully visible. And it's a practice of learning to live from a place of trust instead of fear. And that can only happen step by step by step along your journey, surrendering to the flow of life. Now, I want to talk about how allowing yourself to surrender to the flow of life rewires your brain. So from a psychological and neurological perspective, the brain's ability to change and adapt happens throughout our life, right? Our brains are wired repeatedly. So if you've spent years and years and years thinking and feeling in certain patterns, your brain has already formed neural pathways that support these patterns, right? So if you have an emotional pattern where you are frequently feeling like you're not good enough, or you're frequently feeling like I'm waiting for the shoe to drop, or you're frequently feeling like, what if this goes wrong, or what if this happens, or, oh, I need this person to value me or respect me, right? These are now conditioned pathways. And the good news is that you can rewire those pathways. And it happens each time you consciously choose a different thought, or a different response, or a different emotion. Every time you do that, you're creating new neural connections. And if you keep practicing this over time, these new neural connections become stronger and your old negative emotional patterns weaken, right? So this is how you can literally reset your nervous system. Your emotional state is intimately connected to your body. So experiences like stress and fear and anxiety causes your nervous system to react as if you're in danger. It goes right into fight, flight, freeze mode. Your heart races, your muscles get tense, your breathing becomes shallow. These are physiological responses that make it almost impossible to access emotions like peace and calm and joy. That's why those good emotions are very short-lived. So letting go and trusting the flow of life is really an act of freedom. It's really about, on a daily basis, moment by moment by moment, releasing that grip of control that we so desperately cling to, okay? So our nervous system is always going to be wired for survival. So when you live in a repetitive and sometimes constant state of stress or fear and anxiety, your body believes it's in danger, right? Even if there's no immediate threat, your body lives like there's a threat because your brain can't tell the difference between an imagined worst case scenario and an actual threat, right? So that's why you might frequently have physical symptoms and emotions that are associated with stress and anxiety. So the question to ask yourself is, what are you really trying to protect yourself from? Is it the fear of being judged? Is it the fear of failure? Is it the fear of not being good enough? We don't even realize most of the time that these unconscious fears are running the show. And that's why we live in that state of control, right? Because we're always in anticipation about being exposed or too vulnerable or criticized or rejected or even abandoned, right? And so when you learn, and it is not a one and done thing, it's really a muscle that you have to continually develop to let go of the need for control, to let go of trying to predict and prevent every worst case scenario. Now your nervous system can finally relax and you start to actually realize that the dangers that you're guarding against aren't even real threats, right? I mean, what if somebody judges you? What if somebody doesn't like you? What if you fail at something? What is so bad about that? If you really look at that, if you take out the meaning that you assign to that, that means that you're unworthy and you're not good enough, if you're able to remove that story, failure is just new information, right? It actually just shows you what didn't work and gives you information to take the next step. Somebody not liking you means that they're not in alignment with your energy, and you can just let them leave. You can just let them go. Right? So letting go means recognizing that you can handle life without micromanaging it. It means trusting that even if things don't go the way that you want, or they go in a very unpredictable way, you are going to be okay. Right? You know that you have the inner resources, the strength, and the resiliency to face challenges when they arise. Now, when you internalize that truth, your nervous system can shift out of flight, fight, freeze. And you can stay in a state of calm regardless of what's going on around you. And when you're no longer operating from that place of fear, now you have access to emotions like peace, creativity, and joy. You start to flow with life. You stop fighting against life. Instead of expecting the worst, you open yourself up to the possibility that things might even turn out better than you ever imagined they could. You stop trying to control how you're perceived because you realize others' opinions don't define you. You stop bracing for catastrophe because you know that worrying about what might happen only robs you of this present moment, which is the only place that your life occurs. So when you can ground yourself in this present moment, you have a very different quality of your life. So how we apply this in real life is about consistency. Consistency is the secret to retraining your mind and rewiring your brain and resetting your nervous system, right? Just like building any new habit, it takes time and it takes repetition to create lasting change. Now, something that you can start to practice today is to intentionally choose a positive emotional state. Like choose joy, choose peace, choose gratitude right now, and practice feeling it right now. Right? If you're driving, listening to me, or you're walking, choose to practice that right now, even if you're having a difficult day. Take 5 minutes to sit with yourself. Do some deep breaths and consciously evoke the feeling of joy or gratitude. You don't need anything external to change. You can simply imagine what it would feel like to experience those emotions right now, and then let your body relax into that feeling. Now, just that simple practice, even if it's 5 minutes, in that moment starts to rewire your brain. Now, obviously, permanent rewiring takes longer than that, but you can see that you have some power to associate positive emotions with your daily experience, regardless of what's going on in your day. And then over time, you'll find it easier to tap into these emotions. And even in challenging situations, you're training your brain to choose how you feel no matter what's happening around you. So here's the ultimate takeaway. You are not a victim of your emotions. You have the power to choose how you feel moment by moment. And by retraining your mind, rewiring your brain, resetting your nervous system, you create the ability to live with emotional intention. You're no longer reacting to life, you're consciously creating it. And that is how you design a life that actually far surpasses anything that you could have created using that automatic mind. So when you make this shift, the quality of your life transforms because you're no longer at the mercy of external events. You become the creator of your emotional experience. And from that place, you can build a life that feels not only aligned, but deeply fulfilling. So take a moment today to check in with yourself. What emotions are you choosing? What emotions do you want to be cultivating? Because the power is yours. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody who needs to hear this message, because you never know whose life you could change by simply sharing what you've learned today. And I thank you deeply for spending this time with me. And I want you to remember, the quality of your life is the quality of your emotions. So choose your emotions wisely. And thanks for listening today.